What's up, D-Gens? This is Locked In. As per usual, I'm your host, Mason Cameron. You know where to find me on Twitter. I don't have to keep telling you. You want to go follow because that's where you find all the good stuff. Also, along with our Discord. And always, as joining me, business as usual, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta. You also know where to find him on Twitter. I know you're already following, but it's at Vishaal_Gupta95. I'm going to say it again so that you guys know where to get those picks from. V, we're back. It's another week. We did the Over Underdog show last night, and we had some crazy developments in the water today. That sent the whole football world into a spin, and we intend on making some money off of it tonight. Are you excited? How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm excited. Obviously, huge trade news last night after we got done, and definitely affected some of our picks from last night, and I'm sure it might have some impact on some of our picks today as well.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's always so funny because we actually highlighted both McCaffrey and Jeff Wilson.
Yeah.
And now those are both shot. So
Yeah,
we
pretty
were
much.
joking about mixing and matching our cards last night, but I think that's what we're going to kind of have to do. You're going to have to take a little bit of the Mason card right here. You take a little bit of the Vishaal card right here. You sprinkle them together, and you have yourself a winner. So we love to see it. Business as usual, the very first thing we're going to do is a little bit of housekeeping, even though I wish that we could gloss over
you
it.
got to eat it up last week. Now it's my turn.
Gloss over it. See, we're trading heavy blows now. We're going back and forth. So, and what we're talking about, if anybody doesn't know, is myself and Vishaal, we both go head to head every single week in our piece over at importantnonsense.com. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check it out. We go directly head to head against on picks. Comes out every Wednesday, and it has been a doozy. There has been some blows thrown. So last week, as V said, 2 weeks ago, I took the 2-0. And this last week, V came back out swinging with his own 2-0 in our double against the spread piece. So that brings us back now. V has a commanding lead in all facets of the game. And I'm going to need a really good week to bring us back. So V's actually hitting an insane 58.3%, which is amazing. And then even 60% on the total. That is just incredible. And it helps when you take a pair of 2-0s. See, now I need to come back and hit heavy with our double game total edition this week.
Good luck with that. I'm not giving this lead back. You had your chance.
Oh, all right. So, but what we had last week, which in hindsight, it makes some sense, but I definitely underplayed a few of these teams, and they came back to bite me. The first of which being New England at Cleveland. V, you were on the side of New England +3. I was on the other side, unfortunately. Cleveland -3. And they just did not come out to play. They just didn't show up. Final score, New England 38, Cleveland 15. It was never in doubt. From like the first half, it was never in doubt. So, I can bet you were sitting pretty on that one. How did you feel about that game?
Yeah, I think that one was definitely an interesting one. I think the one thing that we talked about that definitely came true was New England being able to run the ball against Cleveland. Cleveland is just completely not doing it right now in terms of stopping the run. They're getting torched left and right. So anybody going up against them on the ground is probably going to have a good day. And we saw Ramondre Stevenson last week, 2 touchdowns pretty easily. And then probably the surprise that you didn't see coming, which probably swung this, was Bailey Zappi playing so well. Just keeping control of the ball, making plays, not turning it over, just doing all around good things that you wouldn't expect from a rookie who's only made 2 starts in the league. So I think that's kind of the big thing that's swung things around in this game.
Yeah, he played excellent. And that was my biggest shock, actually, which was another reason to why they, this game was never in question, is because he played so well. And that was something that I didn't expect. I thought the game was definitely going to be tight. I thought Cleveland was going to be able to run the ball like they, had hoped to, but they just weren't able to. They had to put way too much on Jacoby. And
Yep.
I mean, as well as Jacoby has played at times, you highlighted it last week too, that he's thrown some more than
Bad
questionable
breakers.
balls, some
Yep.
really bad balls. So those are something that they're going to have to hopefully get solved. Now, if it's Jacoby under center that's solving those problems, or if it's Deshaun
Probably
Watson,
not.
I mean, we'll have to figure it out. But I really don't think that that's their key problem right now. It definitely has to be on their defense that is just not playing well. So,
No, not good
but
at
then
all.
the other game, which was honestly the most shocking to me. Honestly, when I was watching the New England game, I was like, I should have fucking known this one. The Baltimore at New York Giants game, Baltimore -5, and you took the Giants +5.
Yep.
I think it might have even been 5.5. I have the wrong number down here on my notes, but good Lord, the Giants come out and win 24-20 at home. It was exactly what you expected. It was exactly how you drew it up. Walk us through what you saw when you looked at this game.
I just thought that the Giants have been playing scrappy all year. They might not look good for full 4 quarters, but they'll make plays late in the game and kind of figure things out. And Brian Dable just understands his personnel very well. And that's kind of what happened in this game. I would say the Giants were being dominated for 2.5 quarters in that game last week. I think Lamar and the running game were having a field day. Kenny and Drake had his best game in like forever last week. They had no issues running the ball, but for whatever reason, the Giants hang around, and they were just able to make a couple big plays late. They got the ball in plus territory twice in the fourth quarter, and they were able to punch them in. And that's a ball game right there. That's all it takes, just a couple lucky breaks. And the reason you take the Giants at that point is just because the number is so big and they have so much more room for error, which is what you need in this game. Because again, weren't playing well in the first half, but as long as they had +5, 5.5, whatever it was, they were still always within reach of covering that number.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest thing, which we'll obviously get to here in a little bit when we get to our game picks, but this Giants team, I continue to look at it, at least offensively, and be like, how do they win these games? And it definitely has come down to how they're playing on defense. They held a team that was lights out, top 5 in scoring, top 5 in most offensive categories. And when it came down to it late in the game, as much as the Ravens got what they wanted for the first half, they didn't give themselves enough room because their own defense is suspect, and that allowed this team to get back into it. And when you're a team like the Giants that can play aggressive football on the defensive side of the ball and set the pace, it can go a long way. We've seen that team specifically win a championship that way. Now, I don't think that's the most efficient way to win in the NFL, but it's not an impossible way to win. And especially when you have a brilliant mind defensively like Wink Martindale, who has just been lights out. And I don't understand how this guy isn't getting more nods to head coach. And I mean,
I'm sure it'll be coming at the end of the season.
You would hope so, but there are some weird things. Maybe he just prefers it. I don't know. That's the only thing I can explain at this point. But now we move into our picks for this week, which, like we said, last week we did double against the spread. This week we're doing double totals, kind of even it out. And it was really more just because there were a lot of gimmies this week against the spread. And we'll get into those when we get into our game picks. But the first of which I have here. Oh, don't want to share my screen with my Discord DMs open. That would be bad. Here we go. The first game of which that we are highlighting is going to be the Atlanta Falcons at Cincinnati. The total for this game is 47.5. V, you're on the side of the under here. I'm leaning towards the over. What are you seeing when you see this matchup and why you're leaning towards that under?
I'm seeing a couple of frisky defenses in this game, specifically in the Atlanta side. They've played surprisingly well this season defensively, especially as of late. They held the 49ers to 14 points last week. They held the Buccaneers to 21 points the week before. They're playing surprisingly well. I mean, they're probably giving up quite a few yards, but they're not allowing the ball to get into the end zone as much as we probably would have thought. So I think they're playing well there. And then I think Cincinnati is also doing okay defensively. Again, probably giving up some yards, but not a ton of points. we saw Cincinnati, finally have a breakout offensively last week, but they were going up against a banged up New Orleans defense without Marshawn Lattimore and a couple other key pieces. This week they're going up against Atlanta with the full fledge of playmakers in their secondary, including A.J. Terrell, Casey Hayward. Grady Jarrett has been very good. So I think both defenses have playmakers that are going to be able to, slow things down a little bit and make this a lower scoring game.
See, and I definitely see that because for a while, I was really hesitant on the Bengals in getting behind them. And I actually highlighted this last night when I took Burrow to go higher than 285.5 passing yards in this matchup as well. And a lot of that leans to why I like the over in this one just a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, the Falcons have played amazing with what they have. We all expected them to be dead on arrival, and they've been great this year. And the Bengals were kind of the opposite, where a lot of people were everybody should have been really surprised when this team came out and lost 2 games they were a touchdown favored against to start the season. Now, that should cause alarms to go off. But since those games, they've played really, really well. The defense, like you said, has played great, and that's fantastic. My biggest tipping point here for this game is that the Bengals offense is now back, and they are doing good. And I think that a lot of the sharps kind of like this one too. According to PFF's Green Line, they have 93% of the reported cash right now on the over. Now, that's just a general number from tickets, not necessarily from the line moving and adjusting and things like that. But it does show that there's more confidence in the industry right now around what Joe Burrow can do. And I think a lot of that comes from, as we highlighted last night, they're going to be at home after spending 4 of the first 6 games on the road. And they get an Atlanta secondary that, AJ Terrell, he played amazing last year. He hasn't really done spectacular this year with his snaps. They've left a lot on the field. They're actually one of the worst secondaries right now, at least according to the numbers. They allowed a ton of yardage and a ton of touchdowns. And in the advanced stats, they're actually dead last in opposing success rate on passing plays, according to rbsdm.com, runningbacksdon'tmatter.com. Go check it out for all your advanced stat needs too, as well as Pro Football Focus. But they have it nearly 52%. That's huge. That means more than half of the time, teams are converting their pass plays for more than 4 yards. So that puts them on schedule consistently, which is insane because you have to put in everything. Deep balls that don't get completed, short passes that drop for negative yardage. It's everything. And they are allowing 4+ on 52%. And that should worry them because this is not a similar matchup to what they've gone up against a lot. And I think that the Bengals can really come out firing and put up a bunch of the points that are needed. Now, my question would be if Atlanta, who, as you've highlighted a bunch, love to establish the run. They've played great on the ground. They really haven't done a lot through the air. They're actually only one of a handful of teams that have more rushing yardage than passing yardage in the modern NFL, which is insane, especially when you think about it's not like they have some real bell cow at running back. They've been running around with, Cordero Patterson and rookie Tyler Algier and Marcus Mariota. So it's not like it's a direct correlation to one guy's ability to run the rock super efficiently. It's just kind of a team mentality and a buy-in. So now if they can play well from behind, that's going to be another question. But I have some faith that they can put up some points to make this one a bit of a backdoor over, if you will. So I like it. I think it's actually going to be an interesting matchup, which is kind of weird because 6 weeks ago, I didn't think Atlanta-Cincinnati was going to be a good matchup.
Yeah, you probably would have thought this would have been like a 10, 13-point spread or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's what does it say that it is right here? It is a touchdown, but still, I think that's another reason why we're highlighting the total on this game versus the spread because a touchdown is still a lot. Like, a touchdown is a bunch because the Falcons have played as well as they have against the spread. I mean, they're still undefeated.
Perfect.
So yeah, they're perfect. So who even cares about their actual record? I just remember against the spread records now.
Right.
So all right. So on to our next game of the slate that we go head to head on. And we actually even have some game picks from this one. So we are highlighting the Seattle Seahawks at the LA Chargers. The total for this game is 51.5. V, you're on the side of the over, and I'm on the side of the under here. What are you seeing? I mean, there's a lot of obvious things with both of these teams on why the over makes a lot of sense here. But what are you identifying specifically that you like on this matchup?
I'm identifying two teams that play well offensively and two teams that play poorly defensively, which to me equals a ton of points. The Seahawks rank 6th in points this season. They're averaging more than 24 points per game. And then the Chargers offense ranks in the top 10 in points scored and yards gained. Herbert has been very good, 286 passing yards per game. Austin Eckler is averaging 100 total yards per game. So both offenses, I think, are moving the ball quite well. But defensively, I mean, you start with the Chargers. They rank in the bottom 10 in points allowed this season. They were supposed to be a lot better with the additions they made, Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson. But things are now working out for them, especially against the run. They're still giving up a league-high 5.6 yards per carry. Kenneth Walker has played very well in limited snaps as a rookie, and I think he's going to have a pretty big game in this one. And then Seattle's defense has been terrible. We know that. They've given up the most yards in the league and the second most points in the league. They've given up 39-plus points twice already through 6 games. It's just not looking good. I mean, they have a couple nice rookies, Tariq Woolen and people like that, but they're still just giving up way too many yards, way too many points. So I think this is going to be a shootout easily for both teams.
And, it makes a lot of sense. And the funny thing, for people who don't understand, behind the scenes, the way that we make these picks is that we kind of alternate where one week V will bring a number of picks, one week I will bring a number of picks, and then we'll kind of match where we vary.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times, we make these picks and I'll come up with my rationale and then I'll, think about it. And then V will send me his write-up and I'll look at it and I'll be like, dude, I messed up. I'm down. I'm down bad over here. And this was definitely one of those because the write-up makes so much sense. The analysis of why you would like an over even at 51.5, which is still a big number, why you would like something like that. And it makes a ton of sense because 2 bad defenses, 2 good offenses. But oddly enough, this line has actually moved down towards me a little bit at around 50.5. And my only reservation is that I would be so on board, but last week gives me pause because both of these defenses actually played decently well. Seattle held Arizona to 9 points. The Chargers held Denver to 16. Now, granted, both those teams have their own issues.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Offensively, and we can get into that later, V. We can get into that later. But I think a lot of what this comes into also is that defense is a lot about confidence. And so when you can go out and both of these teams held division rivals to low numbers, I think that is going to give them a little bit of a jolt, at least for a little bit. Now, that's not something that drags or goes on. Momentum doesn't really exist in the NFL, but I think having a little bit of confidence will do a lot for these teams. And specifically, I don't really think it's Seattle because we know Seattle's bad. We expected them to be bad on defense, and it's not really that much of a surprise. But as you highlighted, the Chargers being bad on defense is so questionable. It makes no sense because they have like J.C. Jackson, who they paid all this money to, who is one of the lowest graded corners in the league right now, which is insane to think about.
He got benched. Yeah, like that's crazy.
Yeah, and he got benched, right? And you highlighted that in the piece, is that he got benched. They were just done with it. And the crazy thing though is that they still have a number of DBs that should be able to step up and play well that just kind of haven't so far, but they still do have playmakers, key players. Like you highlighted Khalil Mack, Derwin James is another one that we actually talked about early on in the season as he needed to show up, and he has. Both of those guys have played fantastic football. I mean, as good as could be expected, I guess you would say, because as a whole, their unit is bad, but individual performances, they have been playing well and grading well. So when you look at them, it's hard to be like they're never going to get better, because on paper they should.
Yep.
And I think that this might be one of those matchups that with a little bit of confidence, they're at home. JC Jackson just got benched. Shots are fired. I'm sure that their defensive meeting rooms are full of tension right now, even though they're winning. I see that they are going to eventually take some steps forward, and a couple of inspired performances, especially from this front seven, is going to go a long way. Now, if that happens is a question, but with this number being as high as 51, I'm willing to bet that at home they play better defensively. And it's going to be one that we see. This game might end up being a shootout, though. I mean, it's going to be a good one to watch. I'm going to be excited.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
On to our game picks of the week. So now we're not actually going to hit a ton of them. Now, if you've watched this show at all, you know that Vishaal and myself fall on the same thought process a lot of the times. We, work together closely. We talk about these picks all week long. So a lot of times by the end of it, we end up on the same side. And that's how a lot of this week's picks are. But we do have a little dash in there. We have an extra NFL versus, if you will, a little extra on there, because we actually have one we do go head-to-head in here a little bit later that we'll get to. So, but for starters, we are both big on this game, and we talked about it a little bit before, but the New York Giants at the Jacksonville Jaguars, we both like the Giants +3. Now, don't tell Ben, because Ben will be mad at me, because we both, or I shouldn't say we both. Now I'm taking credit for him driving the Jaguars bus and me just like hanging a towel out the back window, like screaming. But if you told me that a team would have under 200 yards passing, under 4 yards per carry, and under 50% third down efficiency, would you think that team won the game? I mean, I wouldn't have thought that at all. But that's exactly what the Giants did. And because they have played inspired football on the defensive side of the ball, we can't continue to hammer it enough. They do crazy things. Wink Martindale is just a mastermind on the defensive side of the ball. I actually pulled it up here, a clip of an insane 3-man stunt where Wink puts 3 guys in the A gap and they all scatter at the snap. It's one of the craziest stunts I've ever seen. I don't know if I'm allowed to show the all 22, so that's why I teetered off from showing it on the show. But you guys all have Twitter. Go look at it. It's an awesome play, and I think it just highlights how this defense performs and how they're carrying it. And this team specifically is built really well on defense, and they have one of the highest blitz percentages. Now, the Jags have done a decent enough job protecting Trevor Lawrence. They're actually one of the top third in the league, or top 10 teams in the league in pass blocking efficiency per PFF. But I think they're going to have a little bit of trouble because they're not a very cohesive group yet. They haven't been together super long. Trevor is still a young quarterback. It's hard to check out of things when a guy like Wink throws 3 into the A gap and you're like, coach, like, what do you want me to check into here? I don't know what to do. So I think that they're going to have some trouble with that, just like pretty much every team has had so far this year. What are you seeing when you see, this Giants +3 and why you like it over the Jags so much?
Yeah, this one might be one of the more interesting spreads we've seen this season. I think there's been a lot of discussion on the social medias about this game specifically, because it's not a lot that you see a 1-loss team being a 3-point dog to a 4-loss team in the Jacksonville Jaguars. That just doesn't happen a lot. So when you see that on the lineup, a lot of people are going to jump to the Giants, and you can see the number here, 73% of people are on the Giants in this game, and it makes sense. But then why would the line be set this way? There's a lot of red flags. It seems like going up for people. They're saying this is a huge trap game. They want you to bet the Giants, but they have some knowledge that is telling them that the Jaguars are going to be able to cover this game. And I think the reason people are jumping on the Jaguars is because they played pretty solidly against the rush. They only allow 86 rushing yards per game, which is one of the tops in the league. And the Giants are very heavily reliant on their run game and Saquon Barkley. But I think some of these numbers are a little bit misleading. It's a very small sample size we have. It's only 6 weeks we've been into the season. The Jags did play well against the run the first 3 weeks, but the last 3 weeks have not been quite as good. Miles Sanders had 134 rushing yards a few weeks ago. Damien Pierce had 99 rushing yards 2 weeks ago. And then Deion Jackson didn't do much on the ground, but he had 10 catches for 79 yards last week against the Jaguars. So the running backs are producing, whether it's on the ground or through the air the last few weeks. And now they play Saquon Barkley, who is significantly better than any of those 3 guys I mentioned. So it might not be the most efficient game Saquon Barkley will ever have, but he's going to put up yards. He's going to be able to move around. He's going to probably get into the end zone once or twice in this game. And then I think you mentioned on the flip side, Trevor Lawrence against Wink Barndale is going to be not an easy matchup for him. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to have trouble. He's going to get pressured. I think I talked about it last week. Lamar Jackson was also not very heavily pressured going into that game. He hadn't experienced it quite a bit. But by the end of that game in the fourth quarter, the Giants got to him once or twice, and that was just enough. Kayvon Thibodeau got in there, poked the ball out, forced a turnover. The Giants had the ball in plus territory. I think they're going to have plenty of opportunities to do that against Trevor Lawrence, who is far less experienced than Lamar Jackson. I think there's going to be turnovers. I think there's going to be enough plays for the Giants defense to make, and I think I'm not worried about Saquon Barkley having a big game in this one.
Yeah, and and we saw it when he got battered by the Eagles. So it's not that there's no precedent for it. They've played well, but again, like you highlighted, there is, as much as we're getting into a third of the season being done, it's still only 6-game sample size, and you really have to do your due diligence to identify which of these performances mean more to this asset of the game or this facet of the game. And I think you hit it on the head that the Jags just haven't done very well stopping backs recently, and they're going to have their hands full in this one. I like the points here. It makes a lot of sense to me. Now, I haven't really checked the weather, but as long as it's not like 110, in Florida and pissing rain or something like that, I think they'll be fine. So on to our next pick of the card. We have one where V is on a game that I think we'll actually even spend a little bit more time on because of the recent news. We actually highlight Christian's old team and Christian's new team. So for anybody that's been living under a rock, the Carolina Panthers have traded away Christian McCaffrey to the San Francisco 49ers in an insane deal that threw our entire over-underdogs card out the window last night. Yep. But V, being the diligent bettor that he is, jumped on this a while ago because we shop early and often, as you guys should too. And V actually has this one at under 40.5. So we have Tampa Bay at Carolina. V, you're like an under 40.5. I mean, it's dropped all the way down to, what's it say, 39.5 now. I bet you it goes even further by game time. Obviously, the Panthers just lost their best player. What else are you seeing when you see this game? I mean there's just not a lot to say about it. Like,
there's not a lot. I mean, even when McCaffrey was there, this offense was hot garbage. Didn't matter if it was Baker Mayfield, P.J. Walker, Christian McCaffrey in, out. This offense can't score points. I mean, they're terrible, and they're going to play another good defense. I mean, they have played a lot of good defenses, which is unfortunate for them, but they're going to play another good one in Tampa Bay. Like, who was moving the ball against this team? How is P.J. Walker going to throw the ball complete passes? What is Deontay Foreman or Chuba Hubbard going to do in this game? I mean, it's just nothing's going to work out for them.
I laughed out loud. Sorry, not to interrupt. No, you say Chuba Hubbard and Devontae Foreman. I laughed out loud, not to embarrass anybody in our Discord, but the number of who's the back on Twitter and in our Discord, and I'm sure in every fantasy football circle, the number of people who are after who's going to be the Carolina Panthers' new lead back made me actually laugh out loud because I don't get it. What part of this offense or this team or this scheme or whatever they've been doing for the last 6 weeks makes you want any part of it? I have DJ Moore in one league and I can't trade him for peanuts. I can't trade him for a soda pop. Like, so I'm not sure what anybody wants with players on this team. And I can understand why this total started so low. It started at 40.5 and it's just going down. So
Yep.
sorry, not to interrupt you. That was just, I got a belly laugh out of that earlier. So
I agree. People are not going to enjoy watching Foreman run for 1 yard 20 times a game. It's just not too fun for them. The only other thing is on the other side of the ball, Tampa Bay has not been great offensively either. They've struggled, and somewhat surprisingly, they only put up 18 points last week against subpar Pittsburgh defense. So, and I think Carolina, for all their faults, they do play pretty good defense. They held the Rams to, I think, 24 points last week. They played well against the Cardinals the week before for most of that game. So the Panthers play good defense too. So I'm just not seeing points anywhere in this game. This could be like a 17-0 game at the end of it, and we'll probably under pretty easily.
Yeah, you're gonna have this one. You're not even gonna have to watch it. Good Lord, I hope
it's not going to come up on Red Zone like once, so
no,
we're not going to have a chance.
You'll have to like look it up and be like, oh wait, they played today, didn't they?
Right.
And obviously, we'll get more into the Christian McCaffrey, trade. But another thing that is shocking to me about it is that they were even able to deal him at all.
For that much in return?
They got a ton for him. And I know that some people are saying the narrative is that they lost a trade because they, didn't get the first rounder they were after. That's all smoke and mirrors, guys. They were just happy to trade him for more than a fifth because his deal is literally hot garbage. They owe him so much money over the next couple of years that, like, no offense to Christian, I'm one of the biggest Christian McCaffrey fans out there. A lot of you guys know that.
He's a fantastic player. Fantastic.
He's a fantastic player. The deal makes no sense. The deal is not going to be cohesive, and they are jumping for joy in Carolina that they were able to get out from under it as they enter this rebuild, and now they have an additional second, third, and fourth. So, I mean, that's what I see when I see out of it. I was shocked that they were able to deal him. I told a number of people that they weren't going to be able to deal that contract. But hey, I mean, it makes sense. We'll get into more Christian later. But on to our next game of the slate here. We have the lowly Indianapolis Colts. And sorry to anybody from Indy. It has nothing to do with, I just take it personally because I had to sit through one of these Colts games. I feel bad for you guys now, but we have the Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. I'm a little surprised this game even made it onto our slate because it's two teams that we've dogged literally endlessly, but it just makes a lot of sense, frankly. And for me, I know that I'm sitting at Tennessee -2.5, and you're actually on, or actually we're both on the total. This was the one I was talking about earlier. We have a little bit of a head-to-head action here. So I'm on the under at 42.5, and you're on the over at 42. And this is what we get for shopping around. We get better values. See, guys, we practice what we preach. We don't just tell you to do these things. We practice what we preach. So for me, what I'm seeing when I see this game, I get it. Jonathan Taylor is set to return, and that's what's actually moved this line down from 3 to about 2.5, and it might even hit 2 by game time. And it's really, I don't see the appeal here because I don't think that solves their offensive woes. Even when he was in, they just haven't been clicking offensively. They need a lot more than, I get it. Jonathan Taylor is a transcendent talent. He's a great player. He's an excellent running back. He's the heart of their team. He's the heart of that offense. But it's not like they were playing that well with him early on. And both of these teams want to play the same style of football. They want to play slow moving, ball control offense. And the Titans have done it just slightly better. Now, both teams are fairly middling on defense. They are essentially middle third of the league in every single defensive stat until you go to Tennessee and see that they allow the second fewest rush yards. They've only allowed a single rushing touchdown. And granted, this is more because teams have decided to attack them through the air where they've been pretty horrendous in coverage. But I'm not sure Indy has the pieces to take advantage of that. Now, Michael Pittman, he's a great player. They've played well. Alex Pierce, he's kind of started to break out. But I don't know that Matt Ryan is that guy that's going to do it. I think he's kind of hit a wall, and I think change hits players differently. I think some players excel from the change, and I think other players are extremely hindered by it and need that comfortability. And I think we're seeing, a 35-plus-year-old quarterback like Matt Ryan who is not comfortable in his new home. And he's not fitting the scheme very well. They haven't been clicking offensively. I don't see where they're going to get points in this one. On top of it all, Indy lost this matchup 2 weeks ago at home, and they've only hit a single over all season. So for me, I don't really love Tennessee, but I think that Tennessee is just a slightly better version of what Indy wants to be right now. And that's why I give them the nod here, especially at home. What are you seeing when you see the over, though? It's actually not that uncommon because let's see. Oh, actually, it looks like it moved. It was a little bit closer to 50 earlier on, but it looks like it's now moved a little bit further down. But what are you seeing when you see the under here or the over here? Excuse me.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a couple players that I'm highlighting, and it's not so much the Jonathan Taylor return that I think is going to be impactful. I think it's the emergence of Alex Pierce as the number 2 wide receiver in this offense opposite Michael Pittman. I think I was very down on Indy too heading into last week. I had that under in the Indy Jacksonville game, but that one went way over. And I think I don't know if it's necessarily turning the corner for this offense, but it showed that with the playmakers at receiver, that Matt Ryan can still move the ball a little bit and get the ball into the end zone. I think having both Pittman and Pierce be effective 1-2 combo is really going to help Matt Ryan move the ball. He's put up a ton of yards. They just have not been able to get the ball into the end zone. And I think that's maybe where things are going to start turning around a little bit. And that's where Jonathan Taylor can help. Once they get into the red zone, he can kind of punish people and get the ball into the end zone. All that to say, I don't think this is going to be a team that's scoring 25, 30 points a week. I think that just means they can get to maybe 20 points pretty comfortably on average every week. And if they can get to 20 points, I don't think Tennessee's going to have much trouble getting to like 24 points in this game. Derrick Henry tore up the Colts a couple weeks ago when they played, and I think he's going to do the same thing this week. Indy's not good against the run. Jacksonville just tore them apart last week. Where did JaMychal Hasty come from? I didn't even know he was still.
Wow, yeah, right.
Huge one down, just right down the right side.
Makes no sense.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That was wild. So I think Derrick Henry's going to have easy time running the ball, and I think Brian Tannehill will make a couple plays here and there to get the ball into the end zone as well. So this is not going to be like a 50-point game for me. I think this is going to be like a 24-20 type game, which is just enough to get the over. I see
42 is not a high number.
Yeah, right. 42 is just not that high of a number. So I think there's just a couple points that they're going to be able to hit to go over this number.
Yeah, and I could definitely see it. I'm going to be honest, it's not one I'm going to even probably watch, but it's going to definitely be an interesting tell to see which of these teams has it in them to win the lowly AFC South, which was a conference that, I mean, we largely washed our hands of prior to the season because of how goofy they were. Now,
I think we were right about that, right?
Yeah, 100%. We faded Tennessee, and now Tennessee. That was a weird sound. That might have been my computer. But Tennessee just hasn't played that well. The Colts, I mean, what have they been doing? It's just I don't want to call it a dumpster fire division because they have some they're just a very middling division. There's nobody that's really going to wow you. There's nobody that's going to, really just absolutely be the worst team in the best, car crash to watch. They're just going to all do very middling stuff. So that's where we sit with that one. And now we move on to one that I picked by myself here. Like I said, we had a ton of crossovers, so we didn't have a ton of games where we went individually. But this is one that I was highlighting here where we're at Green Bay at Washington, and I'm liking the under 41.5 here. And this is pretty simple. It's two offenses that just don't have a lot going for them. Unless Rodgers is gifted Chase Claypool in the next 2 days, I don't know what they're going to hope to do. I have no idea.
What are they going to do? I'm not seeing the hype as Claypool being this guy's going to magically turn around an offense. He's fine, but he's not like some top 5 elite guy in the league.
I know, me either. And so this is one of those things that it's like, yeah, that'd be a great addition to their team, but their problems go a little bit deeper, that they don't have a wide receiver 2, like they don't have a wide receiver 3. They've been very middling passing the ball, which is weird for an Aaron Rodgers-led offense.
Right.
Now, we saw how they've played defensively, and as they've played decently, they've also left a lot on the field, which is a question. And now we have this Commanders team where the commies are going to trot out Taylor Heineke. And we talked about this last night when you highlighted the lower for him on over underdogs. And I'm all on board here, and I'm wheeling it into the totals this week. Both of these teams combined are 4-8 going over the season. And they've kind of just gotten worse and gotten less talent and gotten more injured. And I'm not sure where points are really going to come from now. I don't really think either of these defenses are lights out, but I think it's more of an offensive ineptitude than anything. Are you kind of seeing the same thing, or do you lean in any other different direction for this one?
No, that all makes a ton of sense, and I think you pointed out I had Heineke on the lower last night, and over underdogs, I think he's going to struggle to pass the ball. I mean, Green Bay's giving up less than 200 passing yards per game. They're one of the best in the league in terms of limiting passing yards. And I think one key matchup on both sides is going to be the defensive line being able to get enough pressure on these quarterbacks. I don't think the offensive lines are going to be able to hold up. I think Washington has a very good defensive line. Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, they have a ton of guys, and that's with Chase Young missing all this time. They're still able to get pressure. And I think on the other side, Rashawn Gary and Kenny Pickett their nose tackles going to be able to get a ton of pressure on Taylor Heineke. I don't trust the Washington offensive line at all. So I think both of these quarterbacks are going to be spending a lot of time on the ground in this game. So all of that definitely equal and under in this game.
And also the only real draw for this game is it's going to be hilarious to watch Aaron Rodgers lose his freaking mind for 4 quarters. Like, honestly, Vaughn actually highlighted the over on 2 passing touchdowns, which I don't hate because 2 passing touchdowns isn't terrible for Aaron Rodgers. But my thinking is that I have no earthly clue where Aaron Rodgers gets the amount of confidence in things that he does and like says the things he says in the media. When
we need to make things simpler, is what he said, and then Matt LaFleur comes out and says, "I don't know what that means."
I don't know what that means.
That can't be a good sign for this offense.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, it's like, why is this dude always speaking in code, and why is everything deeper than it is, and why is he always so hurt by everything? And like, I used to be a huge Rodgers fan, and crazy, antics aside, like, I'm not sure.
Be honest, you would be over the moon if he was on the Broncos right now instead of Russell Wilson.
Man.
Come on.
I would love Aaron Rodgers.
You would love Aaron Rodgers.
We'll get into my Broncos. I have a little bit for you later, B. So
okay.
We'll get into that a little bit later. We'll save it. But we're actually moving on to our next game. And again, like I said, we didn't have a ton of crossover, but this is one that you were highlighting, and that is Detroit at Dallas. We have Dak coming back, but you're still liking the under 49. What are you seeing when you see both of these?
I'm just seeing a Detroit offense that did not look good in their last game before the bye. They put up a goose egg against the Patriots, and they're going to be playing a good defense in Dallas. I mean, we saw Dallas got beaten a little bit against Philly, but Philly is a much better offense, much better well-oiled machine over there in Philadelphia than Detroit has right now. So I think Micah Parsons, Trayvon Diggs, they're going to have their normal good games against Detroit. And then, Dak coming back, rusty. He just had a long layoff that I think Vaughn mentioned this yesterday as well, that he had a long layoff, so he's going to be a little rusty coming back with his thumb injury. I don't think it's going to be perfect for this offense as soon as he comes back. I mean, we saw what happened in week 1 when they were all apparently fully healthy, and that offense did absolutely nothing. I think they're going to probably struggle a little bit to get things moving, to get started when he returns. Maybe in a couple of weeks, we'll be more bullish on this offense, but I think right now they'll probably rely on Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard's ground control. And when you do that, that's not a ton of points. It's a lot more time off the clock. So I think 49 was just too many points for me. I think this is probably closer to, 40, 45-ish for me.
Well, and I'm right there with you. And I think that the identity, one of the issues that we highlighted with this Cowboys team coming into the season was that they were going to lack identity because their identity was a high-powered offense behind Dak Prescott and company, and their defense was going to be middling to maybe decent, and they were going to win a bunch of games that way. Or so some in the industry thought, or that's how we drew it up, or that's how they were last year, and we all projected that they were going to be a little bit worse because they lost these pieces on offense. But without Dak Prescott, they completely reshaped this identity of this football team. Now this team plays defensive ball control football. And you highlighted it perfectly that even if Dak Prescott comes back, full go, fully healthy, which I have questions about because people have short memories, but just 6 weeks ago, we were questioning if he was going to be able to come back or if he would needed to go to the IR, or we were, and they forewent that, and he, stayed on the active roster, and they, ended up winning games, and he's back early. Now, maybe he forced himself back. Now, we'll never know because sometimes you get that fear of missing out, even if you're a excellent quarterback like Dak Prescott, your team's winning and you want to be in on it. So maybe he's come back a little bit banged up, maybe not. Who knows? We'll know more when we see. But all we do know is that this Cowboys team can win a different way. They don't need that. And so I'm right there on board with you. Under 49 makes a lot of sense, especially when the Lions kind of did what they did the last outing with, goose egg.
The Lions are terrible on defense, which is kind of why I understand why this line got to as high as it is. But, that still requires Dallas being able to throw the ball all over the field, which I'm not convinced they can do right now.
Yeah, agreed. And on to, I don't even really want to talk about it, V. Can we just, all right, I'm taking the under.
This is on you. I'm
not even going
to. I stayed away from this game completely, so this is all.
Look, okay. So this is another one we highlighted in over underdogs when I took an under on the MILF Hunter, Zach Wilson at 13. I'm going to say MILF Hunter every time just because
we've had in a long time.
Just because it gets a laugh out of you every time, V. But so I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to use this piece to vent for a second because this line could drop 4 points overnight, and I'm still on the under. The Broncos have played just one game that's gone over 35 points all season, so I'm really not that worried about it. But I'm just going to use this as a second to rant.
Go for it.
A number of years ago, John Elway had an opportunity to bring in an offensive protege. Not just that, but a legacy in Kyle Shanahan. He brought Kyle into the building, gave Kyle a bad faith interview, and sent him packing. The Broncos have gone through multiple coaches since then. The San Francisco 49ers have not. Who made the right decision? Now, I had a whole mind-changing, a realization, an epiphany, if you will, V, that I might be just a 49ers fan. Because
possibly
you look at it and tell me how this San Francisco team isn't just Broncos West, or at least the 90s Broncos West. John Lynch in the front office. You have a Shanahan as head coach. And now it really hit me when they got Christian McCaffrey.
Yep.
They have another McCaffrey. So it's a McCaffrey, Shanahan, Lynch combination. And that could have been Denver. And that really could have been Denver. But now Denver sits here inept on offense with the best roster they've had in years, wasting a valuable, aggressive, stingy defense. And they're just cool with it. They're just riding the waves. They're coming out with reports that like the Broncos head coaches are sleeping in the facility. They've been sleeping in the facility for weeks.
As if
Go home.
Is going to change anything.
Right, go home. Maybe that's why they're losing, because they sleep on a couch in the facility off some stupid thought that that's going to win them games. It's not. Their ineptitude and their inability to coach the game in the moment is what's killing them. It's the fact that they have a guy who never called plays. They're talking to Cliff Kingsbury about like, hey, Cliff, are you willing to give up play calling duty? Yo, who has the sack to go ask Nathaniel Hackett how he has the gall to continue to walk out there and call plays? This city, I live in this city. I walk around this city all the time. I bet you Nathaniel Hackett can't even leave his house, and that's why he's staying at the facility.
Not good.
So, rant over. I'm sorry. That got animated, but this has been boiling over for weeks. And to continue to see the ineptitude that you see on offense is just crazy. It's just crazy.
Because of how much they paid for all these guys. I mean, you see ineptitude all across the league, but at least for some teams like my Bears, they haven't spent a lot. They have a very low salary cap hit, and they still have all their draft picks. When you go to places like Denver or Arizona where they paid for these quarterbacks, they paid through the nose for these quarterbacks, and you're not producing, that's when things are not okay.
Right. And I think a lot of what it does come down to is, as we've talked about throughout this season, for sure, and even in the preseason, is that the coaching, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and I mean, we highlighted Wink Martindale just a little bit ago, but on the defensive side. But offensively, I think that if you have just pure ineptitude at play calling, you have a guy that can't feel the game, you just leave so much to be desired and so much out on the field that it doesn't matter how good your roster is. Look at this line. This is a 1-point line.
Against the Jets at home.
Against the Jets. For perspective, for anybody who's not just an absolute degenerate, that means that if these two teams played on a neutral field, the Jets would be favored by more points.
Yep.
That is insane to me. Look at this consensus. The consensus says 74%. That's even higher than in a massive Giants game we talked about earlier, which we were talking about as a trap game. I don't see this game as a trap game. I see this game as a opponent that Denver better bring their A game for, or it's going to be a long, long day.
Yep.
Now, all right. That's it for that one. I promise I will not bring up the Broncos again tonight, but I might bring up Kyle Shanahan again.
And the week after that.
And the week after that, and the week after that. Honestly, I might not even say the Broncos' name on this show until Nathaniel Hackett is gone.
That's a good plan. I like that plan.
And you know me, V, I hate being that guy. I do not like calling for people's jobs, but I am blood hungry right now.
It's rough out there.
It's rough out here. So on to our next game in a much lighter analysis.
Yep.
We have the Houston Texans at the Las Vegas Raiders. And we actually are both on Houston +7 here. V, what are you seeing when you see this Houston team, which is actually taking 58% of the consensus here on bettingpros.com. What are you seeing why you like them in the points on the road?
Yeah, this is a Houston team that is bad, but they are definitely frisky. They play hard for 4 quarters. They don't have talent, but they're well coached. I think Lovie Smith is doing the best he can, probably with that roster. But Mills plays pretty good. He can make things happen. He's going to give the ball away at inopportune times, that's for sure. But he can move the ball up and down the field a little bit. He'll get the ball in the end zone once or twice a game. And then Damien Pierce has been very impressive. I think he is the leader right now for Offensive Rookie of the Year this season. He's played very well, and I don't think they're going to have much trouble moving the ball against this Raiders defense that, besides Max Crosby, is just not very good. They don't have really any other playmakers besides him. So I don't see where the Raiders deserve to be getting 7 points in this game. I think Darren Waller has already been ruled out. Hunter Renfrow is questionable. I think Josh Jacobs could have a pretty nice game in this one, but again, that only takes you so far, as we saw in their last game against Kansas City. I just don't see them being able to cover a full touchdown when they're not that good of a team.
Yeah, and and a lot of what you would think is like, oh, well, they're at home and the Texans are bad, but I think you highlighted it. We've seen other lines. This is one of the higher ones of the week, and frankly, the Texans don't deserve that type of disrespect. We highlighted it just a second ago with the Broncos being – I just said I wouldn't say their name, damn it. We just highlighted that the team that will not be named has a great roster, but, no coaching, and they come out flat every week. But then you have a team like the Texans and some of these other teams that have excellent coaching, and they're coming out and they play hard for 4 quarters, and that makes it hard to cover a spread like 7. It makes the backdoor cover ability all throughout the game, all the way up to the final whistle.
I think we saw this 2 weeks ago when the Texans went to Jacksonville as a similar 6.5, 7-point underdog. They were dominated on the stat sheet for that whole game, but they played scrappy, they played hard, and they kept the Jaguars out of the end zone, and they ended up winning that game.
And they ended up winning. And
that's
that's insane. No, and you put it perfectly. And if I were to sit here and ask you, on a neutral site, Raiders, Jags are playing, who's favored?
I was just about to say, I can't say for sure that the Raiders are significantly better than the Jaguars. So.
Right, exactly. So I'm right there with you. It only makes sense because, hey, they have pieces. Damien Pierce has played well. And some teams, now, like I've said before, and even on this show, I don't think it's the best way to win in the modern NFL to play ball control offense. But if you do it well, it leaves very little margin for error. It makes you a tough out every week. And that type of game travels. So I think when you see the Texans on the road, you shouldn't really think of them as much, much worse than they would be at home, because they're gonna give it their all. I think that they all realize that when you have a roster that doesn't have a lot to play for, well, hey, I have, I as player A, player B, player C, whatever, all your players on that roster, hey, I have to put food on the table. I'm going to need a job after this team, maybe, or I want to be on this team in the future. Like, I'm going to go out and play really hard. And that's how they've played. It's just the only way to look at it. I honestly feel a little disrespected for them. and that we definitely can't tell Jason that we had good things to say about Davis Mills, or he'll never let us hear the end of it.
It surprises me too.
I don't know how he does it. I think it's also just like I think it's more of like he hits a 50-50 spread, but then he's very he always tells you where he misses, but he always tells you where he hits too. Right. So that's why the ones that he hits seem so shocking. But anyway, on to our last game on the slate, and that's Kansas City at San Francisco. So we're both liking Kansas City. So this line has absolutely plummeted. I know that we were both on it fairly early on in the process at KC -3. It's now moved, because of the Christian McCaffrey news, has now moved down to -2 to 2.5. and we both like it at that spot. What are you seeing when you see this team or these teams?
Yeah, I was surprised to see this number drop below a field goal. It was kind of sitting at 3 at the beginning of the week, and I was not very interested in this game. But I kind of told myself if it falls below 3, kind of just have to jump on it. But I never really expected it to actually hit below 3. And then when it finally did, I was like, all right, I guess I just got to snatch this up. I mean, Kansas City might have lost last week, but we all know that they have a fantastic offense. Mahomes has been terrific. I have no concerns that this offense is going to be able to move the ball. The question is, what is Jimmy G going to be able to do? He had a nice stat sheet last week in terms of yardage, and he had a couple touchdowns. But I think what happened last week is kind of what I talked about was he's going to have a couple Jimmy G plays that really torpedoes this offense, and they can't really get back from it. And he had 2 picks last week, and, they might not have been his fault, but it goes on the stat sheet all the same, and, it really hurt that team. Jeff Wilson had a bad fumble that got returned for a touchdown. So I think this offense just isn't quite up to par to match up with Kansas City. And even the 49ers, I think they're getting Nick Bosa back in this one. They're getting Jimmy Ward back in this one. They still have some injuries here and there that are going to be difficult for them to stop Kansas City. And, I think the McCaffrey thing is what people are looking at, but from all the reports, it seems he's not playing a full workload. He's playing 15 snaps, maybe max, something like that. So
you're going to have a package.
A full workload. We've seen, as good as McCaffrey is, he does not help you win ball games. It's just the unfortunate reality of the position. So now if he's not even playing a full workload, why would that move the line at all? I'm not really following that logic.
Yeah, it's definitely a public influenced line where money started flowing in for them because of the news. And I think maybe somebody thinks they might be able to catch him on short prep. I'm not really there, though. I'm right there with you. It doesn't make any sense for me because this San Francisco team, their identity all season has been in this defense. It's actually, I hammered them last week. I took the under 45.5. I took them to cover 4 on the road, and we all saw what happened. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me because they're not really healthy on defense.
No.
And when they're not healthy on defense, the running game and the offense gets put in a bind. And now when they can't dictate with the run, they have to pass. And just like you said, Jimmy Garoppolo isn't really cut out for that type of offense that needs to win because of his arm. Now, he can keep your offense on schedule.
Right.
And not to say like, oh, he's a game manager, like that's some sort of like insult. Like he can make some throws, but he's going to cough up the ball a number of times, or he's going to put the ball in harm's way a few times, or he's going to really not be as aggressive as you would hope.
Or he's just going to miss some shots. I mean, the Super Bowl.
Or he's just going to miss.
He's just going to miss. In people's memories, him overthrowing Emmanuel Sanders is just who he is as a quarterback.
Right. It's the very first and last image that he sees when he wakes up and goes to sleep at night. For sure. So it only makes sense. Like you highlighted, they have Christian McCaffrey. But what has he done to really help them win in Carolina, where he's, an excellent player, runs the ball well, catches the ball well, does everything you'd want out of a back. But I think it just highlights the fact that if you build your offense around a back, you have to be a certain type of team. Now, Carolina wasn't built for that. Now, the Niners are built more for that. They've been looking for that key back forever.
Right.
Now, if they start to committee like McCaffrey, they're the dumbest team alive. But, who's to say that solves all their problems? And it's definitely not going to solve their problems this week because, like you said, he's going to play like 15 snaps. He's going to have one package. And I bet you a lot of that shit's going to be gadget plays that aren't really going to get you a ton of work. So
maybe later in the season, let's wait and see how it goes, and then maybe we can start attributing his play to, helping out the Niners, winning games, covering some spreads. But right now, this early on, I think let's hit pause for a minute and let's just wait to see how it looks.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better. That does it for us. That was our last game of the slate, V. It was another good one. We actually ran a little bit long, and I think that it was probably because I ranted for I don't even remember how long. I blacked out.
I think you just need to put into the schedule every Friday that you're going to save 5 to 10 minutes for a Broncos rant, because let's be honest, it probably isn't going to be changing anytime soon.
It's not going to get better any sooner. But anyway, so that wraps us up for week 7. We're back same time next week. You're not going to want to miss it. I'm going to take attendance, so you're going to have to be there. Check out Over Underdogs halftime of Thursday Night Football. If you missed it, any of them, any of our shows, you can check them on Facebook, our YouTube, our Twitch page, all over there. Follow Important Nonsense on Twitter. Follow all of us on Twitter. Also, join our Patreon. That's how you get into the Discord, and that's where the real magic happens. Myself and V, we're active in there all the time. We're putting all sorts of picks. The whole NFL betting team actually puts picks into there every single week, and that's how you get into that Discord to check those out. So you're not going to want to miss that. And also, V, I have some good news. This is a surprise to V. I haven't told him yet. But you can also go on to shop.importantnonsense.com and use promo code LOCK to get all of your merch courtesy of the boys right here. So you can play along with us. You can use the money that V wins for you to buy your merch, to show us some love. But anyway, that does it for us. V, any parting words for the people?
Should be another fun week, except for Monday night. Just don't watch that game. I promise you, you're not going to miss anything. And this will also be the last time the Bears are in prime time. So one more week, and then it's over. Besides that,
I couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, everybody, stay degenerates. Keep up the nonsense. We love you.